Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Ana Domingo, founder of Puzzle and also member of the International Luxury Hotel Association Northeast chapter. We have created a series of webinars with a main focus to support you through the journey towards what is a post-pandemic COVID-19 scenario to help your business, provide you insights, and also make you grow business again. So today is the third of the webinar series, and the focus is towards traveler trends and drivers of behavior caused COVID-19. Myself as a moderator and joining as panelist, Jerry Henry, who is the Chief Executive Officer for H2R Research, Johnny Newkirk, Chief Executive Officer for Integrated Insights, and Dr. Brand Smith, who is Professor of Marketing and Chairperson for the Department of Marketing and Communications at Emerson College. I thank you all, and I also thank you today's webinar brought to you by Master Metz Luxury Tea and Al Cardenas, who will join us to briefly talk, and he is Tea Master Level number 2, and he will provide some insights and tips on how their product can support you in this pandemic world. So Al, it's all to you.
Thank you, Anna. And I got to tell you, it's a sincere pleasure to be amongst such a panel of esteemed professionals and scholars, and we really appreciate this opportunity. So welcome, everybody. Today's webinar theme, I think, is exciting and relevant. We're happy to be a part of this event as a sponsor. I know our message certainly resonates with the environment that we're in today. And just a little bit of background, Metz or a Tea Master Level 2, it means I've been in the business going on to almost 2 decades now. So that's how the levels work. We learn by osmosis inside the office, and we're tasting every day, and we're talking to the brewers on a continuous basis. So we really are immersed in our microcosm known as the luxury tea world. And again, we're happy to have this opportunity to give you a little bit of insight and what that means for you folks. Metz Luxury Tea actually is our first foray into the luxury hospitality sector as an independent tea brand. Normally, we are a behind-the-scenes supplier to the tea and beverage industry. The Metz Luxury Tea Group was established in 1991, and we are what you would consider an end-to-end manufacturer with direct-to-tea garden dealings. We started as a company that managed tea supply chains using quality assurance standards and food safety protocols that were beyond the industry norms at the time. And we did this so that we could sell raw materials to other businesses, companies like tea brands, premium food providers, and beverage manufacturers were all part of our client profile. Our mantra was simple. We believed that we would only sell tea that we would serve to our families. And today we manage over 1,000 ingredients that are brought in from around 35 different countries, which we then refine and we re-export to customers in 30 different nations. Since 2003, we've been doing exclusive label manufacturing for a luxury hotel brand that is now part of a much larger global hotel chain. And as our partnership evolved, we learned a lot about the front of the house and the back of the house hotel operations and how tea would evolve for the luxury hospitality circle. So why Metz? Metz Luxury Tea is the culmination of these firsthand experiences. It unifies our vision as a team of tea masters, and it fits the needs of the various hotel channels as they relate to meeting their guests' expectations. Metz Luxury Tea is a unique combination of attributes. There are smart improvements in packaging and design, along with a mixture of regional and worldly flavors that leads to a cart of classic and contemporary offerings. All told, Metz delivers a sophisticated tea program that is unparalleled in modern tea culture. You get incredible tea, and you also get world-class food safety protocols, and there's active product support for your customer-facing staff via our digital platforms and our call center where you can speak one-on-one live with a tea master. This provides you with luxury quality tea and the means to deliver an enhanced message, because Mets is also produced in a socially ethical and environmentally sustainable manner. In fact, our facility is one of the first carbon negative tea production plants in operation today, and Metropolitan Tea was the first North American member of the Ethical Tea Partnership. Exceed guest expectations. The luxury tea experience offered by Mets captures the desires of today's upscale hotel guests. It syncs with their values and their taste preferences, and through tea, we feel that your brand can create lasting memories of a unique experience. And these are memories that your guests will keep reliving during their stay and after their stay, and even as they anticipate their next visit. So, we invite you to look at our information when you get the chance. And if you like our message, then share it with your team. And also let us know if there's anything that we may do for you. We have a team of 10 tea masters that combine for a total of 250 plus years of knowledge in the tea business. And we would certainly be happy to share our passion with you. So without further ado, thank you once again for the opportunity to provide this message. And I'm going to hand back the reins to our moderator, Anna.
Thank you so much, Al. Very interesting. And I'm really excited to kick off the conversation. We had a lot of expectations, and the audience shared with us hundreds of questions. So we tried to compile to address all the questions. And we're going to start with, it's a conversation, so this will be addressed to everybody. It's a question that I will start with Jerry. And it's in what ways has COVID-19 changed the consumer behavior, and what we're looking for a long term, and what is going to fade? And at the same time, does this vary by price point or geography?
Yes, well, good afternoon. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing a bit of your afternoon with us. As Anna said, my name is Jerry Henry. I am the CEO of H2R Market Research. We're a full-service market research consultancy that specializes in travel, tourism, and hospitality. I'm old, so I've done this for a long time, and I've been fortunate to be involved in a variety of disaster recovery studies, from all the way back to 9/11 to hurricanes, tornadoes, and what have you. No pandemics. This is my first. But my company has been doing weekly consumer sentiment surveys ever since the pandemic began. And my angle, or my takeaway in answering these questions, are going to be fueled largely from what consumers have been telling me. Certainly in short-term consumer changes, I can probably sum it up in 2 words from what I'm seeing, and that's risk averse. During times of uncertainty and fear, people get pretty conservative, and as that plays out in travel and tourism, at least over the last couple of months, I think it's going to translate into trips that tend to be a little shorter, closer to home, more to familiar places that people have confidence. Initially, I don't think they're going to be spending as much money. I think they're going to be a little bit price sensitive for a while. Part of that's just simply because it's local, and locals tend to be a little bit more price sensitive than for people coming from further away. I think they're going to have a preference for more rural destinations that maybe are a little less dense, perhaps a little bit more outdoorsy, with good variety, indoor and outdoor, but outdoor tends to be performing a little bit better in these early days after the lockdowns than we're seeing in other parts. The other trend, there's a great interest in governance right now, what people are doing to change their attractions, their hotel properties, restaurants, anywhere that a traveler may go. They're very interested in what are the changes taking place. Interestingly, it's been our observation that we've tested about 38, and the most popular changes overall tend to be the easiest. That is cleaning, very highly visible cleaning of surfaces, limiting of capacity, employee checks, temp checks, and things like that. The more intrusive the ideas get, the less popular they become. Long term, I think you're probably going to see a fairly obsessive desire for hygiene. I don't think that's going to go away even if we have a vaccine this fall. I suspect that the lingering obsession with hygiene is going to be around, and I think anything that we can do to make people feel comfortable with those changes, the better. Likewise, I think business travel is going to be a little slow for a prolonged length of time. I think meetings and conventions are going to be slow for a prolonged length of time. Groups, international travel, anything that would involve a little bit greater risk, I see taking a little bit longer to return.
Johnny, how would you think about the question?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jerry just said. I'm Joni Newkirk with Integrated Insight. We're an analytics consulting firm, and most of our work is in travel and leisure. Almost all of our work is in travel and leisure. And we too have been doing research and tracking what's going on, today, and then how people will think about it going forward. I'd say one of the key things to keep in mind is why people travel. So what prompts a trip? And in the case of, I would say that mostly we're seeing cautious. People will be cautious, but they're not necessarily going to stay contained for too long. So travel that involves, seeing friends and family whenever this has already been a burden to be separated, or to just things that are natural events. I mean, a graduation, a wedding, you have an ill parent or an ill relative that you really want to see. That kind of travel, I don't think is going to stay down for too long. So it's really a question of where that happens and what type of accommodations people use. And while some of it would be with friends and family, many of it is in hotels. Other things is that we're seeing is the international will take a lot longer to come back. So people who can manage their itinerary for the next 4 or 5 years and do more domestic type trips now and save some of those international trips, we'll see some of that. But I agree with Jerry that people are going to be looking for, that they're well taken care of, that it's very clean, that there's a conscientious attitude on the part of management that could be reflected even in how their employees are treated and how their employees are just, shown to them, whether they're wearing masks or if they're very attentive, to what's going on. But I think in the case of hotels, when we talk a lot about capacity. So I think in the case of hotels, it may be a little bit different because of individual rooms. So really, we're talking about the common areas and the places where people may be going to dinner or going to check in or at the pool, different places where they'll be around others. Yes, that same level of capacity, perspective needs to be taking place. But on the good side is that you do have individual rooms, and so it's a lot easier to get your occupancy up there whenever demand does come back. But I think it is close attention to detail on the cleanliness. And I think not to be afraid to let people see that that's happening. I believe that the cruise lines are actually a great model for this, that they have been fighting viruses for a long, long time, and that you often will see the crew absolutely cleaning down the common areas during the day. And that's guests love it because it tells them that it's very clean, or using hand sanitizer everywhere. That's been a long-term practice on cruise lines. So if some of that could be adopted by the hotel industry, I think that would be a good thing.
So, Dr. Bren, what are your thoughts on that question?
Sure. Well, I guess just to be brief, I would generally acquiesce with what both Jerry and Joni have mentioned. I would kind of harken back to an old model out of retail known as the gravity model, which essentially suggests that people want to travel not very far, and they want a lot to do when they arrive. So when it comes to retail outlets, shopping malls, etc., the conventional thinking has been that the shorter the distance and the larger the square footage or square meterage, then you're likely going to provide a better draw. That's the location thing, right? So what I would suggest is that people are willing to travel with radius in mind. That is, how far do I have to travel and how much stuff will be there for me to do? A variety of outdoor and indoor activities. And then also, just to add something new here, if something happened, if a risky eventuality did actually happen, how easy would it be for me to get out, to egress, if you would, right? To get back to where I came from. So it's not just, traveling to the destination, it's how easy could I get back home with little complication. because now it's part of the value equation. It's part of the calculus. Where do I want to go and how easily can I get back? As we've learned, people around the world during the global pandemic have kind of been stuck in countries they visited and didn't expect to stay in so long, right? I might also suggest that, kind of alluding to what Jerry mentioned earlier, hygiene will be a high priority. And it may be to the advantage of those companies to let consumers know what they have been doing and what they will continue to do during maybe the consumer's journey at the destination, the theme park, the resort, the hotel, right? So they let people know when you arrive, here's what's going to happen as it relates to those decision items that really matter to you. When you check in, here's what's going to happen. When you need something cleaned or need it verified, we're going to make it very easy to know what has happened, right? And then when it's done. So when you leave your room, maybe there's an optional set of protocols we'll take, right, to enter your room, make sure certain things are cleaned, and we'll even leave a sign or a brief note, right, that says, here's what we did while you were away enjoying whatever is around the hotel, for instance.
Very good insights. I couldn't. I think that we touched base at some conversations with Johnny about the egress option and the raise of insurances as well, and the interest of the protection of the trip. So that's my next question. It would be about how important is that content communication, and how more likely the consumers will, the travelers in this case, will be interested to spend money more on long-term rentals, or going actually into properties that they're communicating this sort of hygienic methods. That's for Johnny.
Okay. I think it get a little bit careful there, because I don't know if it's a message that you want to lead with really loud, or as much as that it's available quickly when you go to somebody's website, so that you can see the exact measures that are being taken, you know, in terms of cleanliness and above and beyond maybe. But I think especially in the luxury market, I would be a bit careful about saying we're doing this much more, because I think the perception is you've always been doing it. I think that is one of the things that distinguishes the different pricing tiers within hotels, is that luxury is expected to be that clean all the time. And I don't believe that your guests actually think it's not. So be careful not to leave the message that you're doing something drastically different. But I think as far as, you know, leading with a marketing message, I would go much more towards what people are thinking right now in terms of why I want to get out, why I want to travel, and, you know, what are the things I want to do, and why it's a great destination to go to, and it's a great place to stay. But I think it's important to get the message across that you've heard loud and clear, and you're doing all those things. I just don't know if it's the prime message for marketing. Everybody would be doing
what
it.
Do you
Sure.
Jerry, what is your thoughts on that third brand?
All right. Yeah, I'll chime in if I may. So I do agree with what Joni's mentioned, right? That when at the luxury tier, there are certain things that are rather understood and kind of should not be stated too early, too often. Otherwise, it's going to create noise, right? It's going to create some kind of cognitive dissonance. You know, that said, I do know that more consumers today care about how things are made, right? How things are done, and these present opportunities for differentiation, right? So where it maps onto the luxury tier, right? You know, the hygiene, the sanitation, the reminder as to why you've always trusted us, right?
Yes.
You know, this is why you're coming here, right? We've always taken care of you, and we want you to rest assured, quite literally rest assured, right? That we have been doing these things. We've been ready for moments like this, right?
Yes.
And we'll be ready for the moments that are beyond this one.
Excellent. Jerry, I would like to ask you, have you seen on your sentiment and research that you're conducting any difference between age demographics?
Yes. As you might expect, we've seen younger people, their level of concern is not quite as great as like millennials versus Gen X versus boomers. However, I don't want to leave the impression that it's low either, because everybody has a fairly high level of concern about their own health, about the health of their friends and family, and about the economy. So we are truly all in this together. But if you break it out by generational cohort, there is the older you get, the stronger the concern becomes. And then likewise, if you look at people that say they are going to be among the first to get back out, what we might call early adopters, they do tend to be much younger. I think just in general, COVID or no COVID, young people are a little bit more risk takers than older people. And as it comes to this virus, kind of the same way. It's not to say that they're not concerned about it, but younger people are less likely to let it alter or control their lives. So they tend to be among the group is going to be most likely to get out. Likewise, though, on the other end, don't just assume that if somebody's 55 plus, they're off the table even this fall, they're not going to travel. What we have found is, yes, in general, older people are going to be less likely, but you got to dig a lot deeper than that, because there are a lot of active older adults that love multi-generational travel, that get out with their grandkids, or that are just active themselves and go out as couples. And these folks are not going to be contained, I love Joni's word, in their travel pursuits either. Conversely, if you have some comorbidities, if you don't get along as well, if you're a little bit more conservative in your views, those are going to be some of the late majority or the laggards that are probably going to take a while to come back. So the one thing I would say is it's very important to ask your guests, because we are also seeing a market that's very divided, not just by generational cohort, but also psychographically about whether they're ready to get back out now, or they're a fast follower, or an early majority, or later. So it is very important to understand how your guests are feeling and where they fit on that curve.
Mm-hmm.
Just Johnny or Dr. Han, please feel free to jump into the question if you like.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I mean, I think that younger people are going to get it back in the game sooner. I still think, though, there's a good amount of travel that's going to happen amongst all the cohorts, and I think it'll just start to increase. It'll be interesting to see how it goes through the summer. I mean, one of the things we always say is take a look at what your bookings are doing, as far out as you can see it. What's happening over the holiday period, in December and early January, and then if you have any visibility beyond that. But it would tell you whether or not people are starting to get comfortable. But I think everybody is just very cautious right now, looking to see what happens next, but taking precautions. And I think that is one thing that even within the resort and even within a luxury hotel, that to the extent that you can help them with the social distancing, and to be able to almost, especially at the luxury level, I mean, the more hands-on treatment, the more specialized treatment, or getting them to their room without going through the front desk, right? That all of those kinds of things will help them feel more comfortable that, they're being well taken care of, at least while they're at your resort. It may be harder to think about getting there. To Brent's point, you may want to drive versus fly. But if you can control what you can control, I think that's going to make people feel very comfortable.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts. One is kind of more near term. One is longer term, but cognizant of the present. Near term, I think people, as what Joni said, they're going to look at their locus of control, and if, say, they have the financial means to control their arrival happening away from a crowded time, they might do that, right? They might be taking flights, be they, early red-eye flights, chartered flights, private flights, where they don't have to be around a lot of people. So they can secure their entry. And maybe if they're staying at a place that doesn't have a lot of people to begin with when they arrive, that might also be attractive to them. So where there are possibilities for them to travel great distances and come in contact with many people, they may not miss a beat, right? So if we're talking very high-end luxury travel, I'm not sure they really stop doing that anyway, in some cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a more, I guess, longer term consideration, this is where I think, properties, can borrow a page out of Disney's book, right? making appointments to use the very popular ride. So if there's a great pool, or there's a private Japanese garden at your hotel, allow people to schedule an appointment to visit it. So it's not just, oh, browse it when you feel like it. These are things that may not be viable. I would say also, when we look at how people check in, we know that there is still some measure of pain points for even luxury travelers when they check into certain hotels, because luxury really varies by geography, doesn't it? So when people check in, can you maybe remove some of the front desk components? Can you allow someone to check in really with their phone, right, and not touch the door handle? Can you allow them to use things like, a Google, a Siri, an Alexa, right, to manage much of their experience so they feel comfortable, right? Because one of my areas of expertise is the psychosocial aspects of consumer behavior. And sometimes people just don't want to touch stuff, right? They say, how can I minimize the contact between myself and these things in the room that someone else might have touched? How do I minimize my own anxiety during this experience so it can be more favorable? So how do we bring in some of these smarter technologies that some places have, but still more places need? And how do we integrate those things into the consumer experience?
That's very interesting insight, as the whole process of planning a trip will definitely change, and there will be less impulsive planning, most likely. So this question would be to all of you. We can start with Jerry again. And in this current pandemic situation as well, the social, here in the United States, obviously, with what is going on and this social environment we're living in, specifically from a high-end properties and high-end travel, how these can be quite sensitive at the minute, and what have you observed that in your studies towards that in a price environment?
Interestingly, I didn't expect it, but overall is when we compare high-end travelers today, or high-end consumers versus lower end, as it relates to concerns about the virus itself and what have you, there's not really a lot of statistically significant differences. Where there is, however, is popularity of governance, and that is they are concerned, they are more likely to wear mask or to wash their hands frequently, or to use hand sanitizers and what have you. And interestingly, when we talk about messages or motivators and price come into place, normally it's always about value. Normally, I do not expect higher income people to be as concerned about price. But so far, what we're seeing, at least in these surveys, is that they still are, that price would motivate them. Now, whether that actually comes to pass empirically at the front desk or in ads is going to remain to be seen. But I think it may go back to the fact that they are a little bit more cautious right now. They are thinking a little bit more local, and people that stay in the region, no matter at what income, they tend to be a little bit more price sensitive than they would if they were taking a long haul trip. And most of the folks that fall into a very high income are used to traveling, well, wherever they want to, really. But they're probably going to stay a little bit more regional for a while. And when they do, I think they are going to be a little bit more, let's call it value sensitive instead of price sensitive. The concern I think they're feeling is if the experience changes a whole lot, as it has to, because of certain changes that occur to keep them safe and that they want, but it's still somewhat restricted for X amount of dollars. And so that's another piece that's playing in there, and that we're reducing the experience, but yet the price is about the same. And that may ultimately be playing into why we're seeing just a tad bit of price sensitive that I wouldn't expect. So I think the opportunity is, how do we create new innovative experiences that are special, that still give them some privacy, some distance from others, to help that value equation seem a little bit more palatable to them. So I get throughout the year, I don't really expect that to continue. I think this is a near-term issue, but value concerns are always going to be there too.
Yeah. I think one of the things we're seeing is that price is much further down the list in terms of concerns and barriers compared because of COVID, right? So how much higher everything else is that's current right now. So, and then the other thing is just all the time, I mean, in most of the research we do, frugality and income are not that highly correlated. So some of the most frugal people have the highest income, and I'm not sure they were your target market to begin with, the luxury traveler, correct? But in terms of discounting to promote the business, that may be something a lower tiered hotel might consider. But I would even use caution there. What you would need in terms of incremental demand in order to make that work for you. From a high-end luxury market, I don't think I would go there. I think I would still go with the strong message of why people love you in the first place and why they want to choose you versus another option. And I think Brent said a lot of it at the beginning in terms of you've always been doing these things really well, right? So this is the trusted place for these travelers. And let that play out first and see how far it goes. But I don't think this is a price game. I don't think so at all. And as far as value, I think that people generally believe that the value's there in a high-end luxury hotel of the people who are your clientele. And COVID hasn't changed your value proposition, really. This is all about external events that are keeping them back. So be a little bit careful of price, only because it takes so much to make up that gap once you start to discount the product.
Yeah, I just want to, if I may echo, I love what Joni just said, right? That this is about external events, not your value proposition. And, any player has to be very careful about discounting because it, again, can create noise regarding the value proposition.
Yeah.
So why the discount, right? When you start putting such questions in your consumer's mind and your client's mind, you're going to create more noise, and they're going to wonder, well, I thought I knew who you were and I trusted that. Now I'm wondering, might your discount attract, again, maybe too many people? Might there be corners that you're cutting, right, that have either prompted this discount or that you have to cut because of this discount, right? These are all things that aren't really to come into question to begin with, but they can come into question with the discount as a prompt. So again, it's externally related, not about what you've been doing. It's not really about you per se. The price is not, so it's not really a price game.
So this is very, very interesting because it kind of leads me to think about how all the shift into the content and communication needs to happen towards acquiring a new client and the bookings, as the value proposition is not affected. However, before COVID-19, everything was about reviews and endorsements and celebrities and all the social media content towards that direction. I would direct this to Dr. Brand. And what do you think will be the role of the reviews in this future post-COVID?
I have I have mixed feelings about reviews. I believe what people generally are looking for in reviews, they tend to find, right? If you're looking for a reason not to do something, you'll find it. If you're looking for a reason to do something, you'll find it. Now, I guess kind of germane to the moment, I'll go back to a mention by Jerry. Hygiene will be priority. So I think people will kind of be scrolling for mentions relating to hygiene, relating to health and safety, not so much physical safety, but that kind of relate to mental comfort with the hygiene situation. Does it seem like it's okay? If I didn't read anything about it, okay, I'll assume things are fine. But if I read a few reviews about a location or a destination that mention hygiene and they're not positive, I'll probably pass on it, right? Now, that said, I'm not so sure that's really going to happen much. In terms of the experiences, though, I think people will be looking for the word of mouth they always have, right? And so, we learned from Disney a long time ago. You set up Wi-Fi to encourage people to take pictures and share them. We are a generation of consumers that's all about storytelling. And so we want to allow people, we want to foster those ways for consumers to tell their story, especially in the moment. right? And so maybe there are incentives along the way for people sharing their story, you know. But I think that's going to be part of what people are considering. So, you know, a friend of mine from Thailand wrote an article that if you can't beat them, let them join. And essentially the point is allow consumers to join in creating your story. It's a co-created value proposition, okay? You have an idea of what your offer is, but the consumer really has a better idea of what she, he, they really value, right? Back to what Jerry and Joni have said. What is it that they value, right? There's what you put up on the table, then there's what they say, this is what I really love. And there are probably other people just like them who can articulate and receive such messaging, okay? And then you repeat that, you know, so we're talking frequency and amplitude. Yep, so let them be your brand champions, let them be your brand ambassadors, your shepherds, your influencers, what have you. And use something like Brand Watch or Mention to kind of track some of that stuff. So you can see what's getting traction. You can follow the trajectory of such, right? Very inexpensive social media tools, but I think they'll give you some confirmation or disconfirmation rather quickly.
Interesting. Jerry, what are your thoughts on that? I'm concerned on the idea of content that it's so luxurious that could be too sensitive for the world that we're living right now, and this means that not everybody can afford right now because we jump into a crisis, a financial crisis, and the pandemic, and therefore there's a fine line. What it's kind of the right tone, the right message with the current situation. That basically wanted to be kind of my wrap on that matter.
Yeah, I think it's just being very targeted, which I'm sure luxury hotels are. So they're targeting their audience. I don't know how much will be consumed by others, but I wouldn't step back from that in terms of being able to really send a solid message to who your high-end affluent client may be, and to stick with the message for them and not worry too much about how it may be perceived by others, because you're not targeting them and they're not necessarily hearing that message. I do think too, just building on what Dr. Brent said, is that it's very much, again, with the more high affinity clients, right? So anyone who has points, in the programs or memberships. I mean, Jerry and I both see it in, parks in terms of passes. Those are the people more inclined to want to get out now. I mean, they're ready. I mean, they are very much ready. It's the less affinity people that are going to take a little longer to come across, but I think do focus on them. I mean, I would go definitely after any type of membership program you have, a loyalty program that you have, as a starting point to try to get strong messages out there, and even test the messages among them, because they're pretty easy audience given they understand what you offer.
Yeah. So Jerry, my question to you right now would be, so we touch on age, we talk a little bit on psychology and pricing. What the sentiment towards international versus domestic travel is showing? Can you hear me, Jerry?
I'm sorry, no, I did not hear you say Jerry. All of our studies so far have been domestic, but within that, we do ask about their interest in traveling internationally, and it's almost non-existent. It is much lower than I've ever seen it before. So while I'm sure it's going to come back, and I'm sure it's still on the horizon, and I'm sure it's still part of bucket list, the nature of the market right now, frankly, regardless of what income or what age, is the primary focus. And so everything I'm seeing is primarily domestic, less air travel, more rubber tire. I think that will slowly evolve and change, and will be right back to where we were. The question is how long, and I think a lot of that's going to be tied to the number of COVID cases, and whether there's a therapeutic drug that is found, whether there's a vaccine, or whether this whole whack-a-mole thing will work, and that we get the number of cases low enough that we really can identify, isolate, contact trace, and when they pop up, we keep it down. I think if we can do that, whether there's a therapeutic drug or a vaccine or not, we will get to a new normal pretty rapidly. But we need to see that occur. And until there is some confidence that one of those things is going to occur, I just don't see group travel or international travel gaining a lot of traction. But it will. It's just going to take a little longer.
Right. Can I, if I might, just to chime in briefly, I think kind of as we look globally, right? So, you know, when we're looking to the Western Hemisphere, particularly North America, international is going to mean something rather different for us than it would, say, in parts of South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, right? So I'm going to go back to what I mentioned before about radius. So, you know, someone going from, I don't know, Austria to Northern Italy, right? If it's a place they're familiar with and they say, okay, if we leave at this time and we arrive at that time, it won't be very crowded, right, when we get there. And maybe we're able to, you know, maybe we can go to some lake that's not heavily crowded, not packed. And the only others we're really concerned about are the others we're bringing with us, right? You and I and the extended family, a multi-generational trip, right? Because it allows them to manage that locus of control and they can get back home easily. Though if we're talking flying from the United States to virtually anywhere, right, not called Canada or Mexico, then there's more risk involved. How would I get back easily, right? And so when you have the European Union, for instance, you know, your passport, if you're a member, gives you easy mobility, right? So that simplifies, it removes some of the complexity of international travel that we don't enjoy here in the US, right? Which makes the risk management factor increase, you know, exponentially possibly.
It's all about the fear, which Dr. Brent said earlier, is the fear of being stranded. And I mean, people saw it happen. I mean, just an immediate shutdown, you know, of different countries, and it's going both ways, right? So both the United States shutting down and other countries shutting down. So I think that will continue to happen, is that it'll be just a much higher risk type of travel. I definitely see an opportunity for more travel insurance, right? And for companies to be very aggressive about that message is, you know, we'll get you back from wherever you are, you know, guaranteed. And to run with that, because it tends to give people a little bit more comfort that they're in good hands. But there's also this confluence of air travel and international destinations. So it's going to have to be a partnership where they work together. That I think about the Caribbean, like something close to the United States, but international is that, while it may take longer for cruise lines to come back, in terms of, you know, air travel into the Caribbean, what comes first? I mean, do the hotels have to prove that they have enough demand before the airlines will put a flight there, or vice versa? And so working together, and I think, again, putting in the guarantee to the guest, to the consumer, that they're not going to be stranded one way or the other, might be a place to really start to partner. Different partnerships may evolve out of this, and very focused type sales efforts to, you know, if you can make 1 or 2 flights a week work and make sense coming from New York into the Caribbean, is that something to just really focus on to get some of the luxury resorts there, you know, up and running?
Yeah.
So I think that can work. I still think that the whole pattern of closer is better, right? Right now is true. Is that, you know, what can you do with Canada? What can you do with Mexico if you're from the United States? But in Europe, it's other European countries to focus on first.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a hard nut to crack, the international. Dr.
Brent, what do you think from a psychological point of view, the key factors that will support the confidence in bookings, in terms of, and I'm thinking big brands versus small brands. So when we have big brands behind with a recognized label globally, but then we have a property or business that is small, how can this affect this behavior?
Okay, I have I guess a pair of approaches here. So if I were advising a fairly large brand with an international and multinational presence, I would echo what Joni just said. It's a great time for alliances, right? Your tourism bureau, if you've got a national airline or a regional airline, if you have a hotel association, you know, a couple of theme parks, such that you say, we're going to put together this experience. We're going to all kind of commit to a share of this experience, and we will commit to getting you here and out if something bad happens, right? On the smaller front, I might say, and I guess also the larger brand can also say, well, we're committing X% of our resources to making sure you have an enjoyable, safe, healthy stay with us, right? We've committed millions of dollars to, the finest aerated, cleaners. There's not a better way to clean a hotel or a theme park than the stuff that we use, okay? I think on the smaller scale, if you have say a bed and breakfast, you've got a pension or something, you say, you talk about how how your offering has been part of your family's generational thing, right? We've been doing this for decades or a number of years. We treat people like family. When they come here, right, they won't be treated any better than we could in our small hotel, right? We're an 8-room hotel, okay? We greet our guests, in person. We take care of everything for them. We don't have a lot to manage. That's why we can manage this well, right? And then you do the alliance thing. You have partnerships on a scale that you can manage. So maybe if there are cities or towns, maybe they're lake towns, right, that are themselves attractions, they partner with, they ally with those smaller independent hotels, those smaller independent eateries, because essentially they're either all going to win together or they're all going to lose together. So it's a matter of collectively working to bring up the tide.
So I have a question for either Jerry or Johnny in this case, if you can each reply. What green shots would you think will be looking for signals as the recovery is underway?
From a consumer standpoint or from an industry standpoint?
I think that they're quite correlated, but
Okay. From a customer standpoint, I think they're looking at the number of cases that are in any given area. It's widely advertised in the media and what have you, and I think people are still very concerned about both the trajectory of the number of cases, the number in a specific area, how many they've had in the last 7 days, what's the trajectory. And so I think that the hotel industry is tied to travel, which is tied to the economy, which is tied to confidence, and confidence is tied to COVID. And once that starts going down, everything starts moving again. So from a consumer standpoint and from an industry standpoint, I think we want to see those numbers going down. Unfortunately, at least at a nationwide level, and certainly in the Northeast, they have very well. The other thing I think travelers need to see are other travelers venturing out. We are herd animals. And that the reality is the only reason we were willing to shut everything down in the United States is we started seeing other states, other communities, other events all shutting down, something we'd never seen before. But once we started seeing that, we were okay shutting our businesses down, our states down. And so something I've not seen in my lifetime, and I don't think any of us have. But likewise, to get us going out again, I think travelers have to see other travelers going out. And I think social media is going to be huge. That once we start reopening, once travelers start getting back out, I think other travelers seeing them, those that would be the fast followers of the early majority, are going to need that in order for them to come back out themselves. From an industry standpoint, I think Joni said it earlier, it's demand, it's RevPAR, it's occupancy, it's getting the health both of our hotel back, the health of our community back, and our industry sector back. And then at 30,000 feet, I've been tracking TSA throughput. TSA's got a great website that measures how much throughput are they seeing nationwide today, and what was last year on the same day. How much has it been? It's still down, but you're starting to see it come back every day. Another tool I've been using is Arrivalist Human Movement, that are measuring literally by state how much traffic is starting to move back. And this is traffic of people that are moving beyond 50 miles from home. So another good one. And of course, STR is always a nice metric. I never thought I would see it get down to 20% occupancy, which we all saw. But as they measure it week by week by week, we're seeing it slowly start to return. I think all of those are metrics that the industry is following. And then on a nationwide and on a statewide view, I've been watching intent of the crowd slowly start to come back in consideration. Brand awareness is another one, as some brands chose to kind of play possum during this time and not be out there. Others have stayed very much at the forefront. I think the ones that maintain brand awareness are probably going to come back quicker than the ones that halted their media for a while and are just now starting to come back.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jerry said. And I mean, I think the airlines are a great metric to be looking at, is how much capacity are they adding on week by week and where, right? From where to where. I mean, so that could tell you what might pick up faster. But I do think from a business perspective, and we haven't talked too much about that the convention business, the business perspective, I think business travel is going to come back slowly. There's just, I think first, you'll start to see more people return to an office environment. Then I think the business travel will pick up. But I do think it's coming back. I mean, I don't think that it's going to continue to just be all on Zoom or all on, face-to-face on a computer. But from a meetings and event perspective, that's the one that's a little bit harder. And I think it's mostly because of the planning period that has to take place, the longevity of the amount of time it takes to plan. But yet, that's an entire industry that I think is needed, that I think people benefit from, and it has to be figured out. It's hard though. I mean, the very fact that you want as many people to attend a large trade show, right, or a large association show, and then you want to social distance them at the same time. So I think that's a little bit harder to figure out, but you have to get open. So what's the happy medium there where you can at least do the event, right, and make some money off of it, but also take into account that you may want to cap it a little bit more than what you have in the past. And then is there enough capacity for all of those people to have a place to stay and a place to eat? So it all has to be figured out. But that's the part where I think more industry effort is going to be needed. And I think, talking about the partnerships again, more working in partnership with each other to figure it out. I mean, wherever an event has been held for a while and you've done it several times, get together and talk to the airlines about getting the flights in there, talk to the hotels about, are they ready to be open, for business. But it's harder because it's more complex. And I feel like if you just leave it up to the meeting planners, it might be a lot longer than it needs to be to figure out the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I would like to also review the fact that as we shared certain psychology angles towards the future, Dr. Brand, what is your opinion in terms of the ones that they will remain and the ones that they will fade?
So could you repeat that?
From a psychological point of view, which are the attitudes for the travelers will remain and which ones will go away?
Well, we still are, through all of this, we are still human individuals, right? We have not changed. I think, attitude is long-term. It's rather, it stays with us for a while for a lot of reasons that I won't get into, but what we'll see stay, variety seeking, right? That's part of who we are. We look for, culture will always matter. We know this, right? So we look at the high context cultures of the world, the high context people of the world, being in the presence of others, that means something. And so we have taken this maybe corrective action or safe action for a while, but we're not going to be comfortable staying here for a long time if we are high context people. We just won't. We'll find a way to get closer to each other, right? It might be 5 feet, it might be 4 feet, but we're going to find some ways to do more things together. We might even find ways of kind of dealing with, COVID as we have dealt with an immeasurable number of other things, right? I think also, when you look at kind of just the need to vacate, our current space or circumstances, that's going to be around for a while. Travel and tourism, they've been around for a while. They're going to be around for as long as we are around. right? Because people want to experience something different. They want to be taken somewhere. I'm reminded of, a way that Las Vegas was once described to me, a place for people to sometimes be entertained when they can't entertain themselves, right? So we're always looking for ideas on, hey, what's next? What else is out there? So yeah, I think these things are here to stay. I do think with the variety seeking stain, we will be a little more conscientious, right, about how we do what we want to do, and then also conscious. I do believe going forward we'll be more collectively conscious. We're going to be a little more other oriented, right? So simple things like the hand washing that we probably should have always done but became lax with, I think that's going to stay around for a while, because we've all been affected by this, in some kind of way, and we don't want to return to this. I think collectively we know, as we got used to 9/11, and many young people don't remember 9/11, but they do see evidence through our behavior. There's a way to travel. There's a way to go to the airport, right? There's going to be a way to check into a hotel. There's going to be a way to enjoy yourself solo or in a small group, when you go out dining, when you go to a resort, go anywhere. So yeah, we will be, I won't say risk averse, but I will say conscious and conscientious, more other oriented than we've ever been before.
I appreciate the answer. I think that we're going to close as we're reaching our hour. And in closing, I would like to thank you all for being here, to the panelists and also to the audience. And this is from the International Luxury Hotel Association Northeast chapter. And please join in for the next webinar. It will be focused on hotel properties, operations and facility protocols following COVID-19. We do encourage everybody, if you've been interested in this topic, tomorrow we will upload the video on our website, which is the luxuryhotelassociation.org, on the event section. And in closing, we encourage as well to join ILHA, as this is a great platform for connecting professionals and leaders looking for trend solutions and growth in the business. We really look forward for that. And for a limited time, ILHA is offering a Name Your Price membership for professionals and students. Once more, we would like to thank all the audience, and we hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of their days. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.